Hello, welcome to the One Life Church devotional series. We cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's chapters are Job chapter 12 and 13. Job is in the pits of despair. This is a cold and misty day up here in Hilton. It's a miserable day, but nothing like the misery that Job was going through. Now remember, his friends Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar had given him their rebuke, their counsel, their supposed encouragement. It didn't go down well with Job. Job had replied to them on 3 separate occasions, and this is his last reply, his reply to Zophar. And what we see is we see the frailty of Job, we see Job's view of God, and then we see his conviction that we can learn from. And so let's have a look at it. Job chapter 12, we can see he opens up very sarcastically, saying, I have a mind as well, you know, and I'm not inferior to you. And then he says, look, I have become a mere laughing stock. Though I am righteous, people are laughing at me all over the place. Which reminds me of Jesus, isn't it? I mean, Jesus, the righteous, was hung on the cross, and the Pharisees mocked him, and the religious rulers mocked him, and the soldiers mocked him. And it will be with us, the righteous, the ones called of God. We too will be mocked, but he's complaining about this. And he says the unrighteous seem to be at ease, they seem to be undisturbed, they seem to be secure. And then in Job 13, he doesn't relent. You can see his frailty. You can see we call to a much higher view than Job has here. This is what he says to them. What do you know? I also know that. I'm not inferior to you. You, however, smear me with lies. You are worthless physicians, all of you. If you only would altogether be silent, for you, that would be wisdom. He says the best thing that you could do, the way that you would demonstrate your wisdom the most, shut up. Stop calling me the names you're calling me, you useless physicians. Now, we're called to higher standards than that, aren't we? I mean, in Romans 12, we're told we called not to repay evil with evil. But we see the frailty of Job. But then we also see the view of Job. He says, listen, you can learn from the animals. You can learn from the aged. This is what you need to understand, that God's hand controls everything. He basically is rebuking Zophar and is saying, listen, I understand God. Now he gives his theology. He talks about the sovereign power of God. He says what God tears down, no one can rebuild. What he imprisons, no one can release. He talks about his strength, his insight. He talks about how he overthrows officials and he turns darkness to light, how the nations, even the great nations, bow before him. But it's his conviction that I want us to look at right now. This verse, verse 15, one of the most famous verses in the Bible. Though he slay me, Job says, yet will I hope in him. Though God slay me, although he doesn't understand where this is coming from, he says, even if God wants to kill me, he says, I'm going to put my hope in him. And basically this was his answer to his friends, but it was also answer to the devil, even though he didn't possibly know that the devil had asked to sift him. Though God slay me, this is my answer. Now, you know what this reminds me of? Remember that famous author C.S. Lewis? He wrote the Chronicles of Narnia. He wrote the Screwtape Letters. Now, the Screwtape Letters are basically from a fictional story of demons talking to each other. Now, a senior demon talks to a junior demon called Wormwood. And this is what he says. C.S. Lewis was a genius in taking grand theology and putting it in words that children could understand. This is what he says. He wants them to learn to walk and must therefore take away his hand, saying God wants his people to walk, therefore God takes away his hand. And if only the will to walk is really there, he is pleased even if they stumble. He says, as long as a Christian wants to walk, this is what the one devil is saying to the devil, this is God wants these people of his to stand up and walk, even if they stumble. Do not be deceived, Wormwood. Our cause is never more in danger than when a human, no longer desiring, but still intending to do our enemy's will, looks around upon a universe from which every trace of him seems to have vanished and asks, why has he been forsaken, and yet still obeys? There's one demon saying to another demon, this is when we most in danger. When the Christian looks around the world, looks like God's vaporized, everything's disappeared, doesn't understand, thinks he's been forsaken, and yet obeys God. This is what Job is saying. Yet he slay me, still will I obey. You know, sometimes we don't understand. We don't understand what's going on in heaven. We don't understand what's going on with the devil. We don't understand what's going on with actually even in the purposes of God. And yet we obey him. That's when we're very, very powerful. I mean, I'm sitting in this miserable rainy day. You can hear the rain all around me. And it's Christmas time. It's Christmas time, and it's like this. Yet will I rejoice in him. This is Charles Spurgeon says this. When he talked about bad times being actually good times, he says they're good times really, because they show us that we're sons of God, because God disciplines those he loves. They're good times really because our faith is created. They're good times really because it tests and affirms our faith. Our faith grows and we see that we're not imposters. Difficult to understand. Yet he slay me, yet will I obey him.